The interview nobody was supposed to remember, but no one could forget. The cold wind of Manhattan brushed against Emma Carter's coat as she stepped out of the yellow cab and looked up, way up, at the towering steel and glass masterpiece known as Callister Global. 30 floors of polished ambition. This was it, the place where dreams could soar, or be shattered without warning. She clutched her worn leather portfolio tighter, the one she'd used for every interview since she graduated. Inside were 15 years of blood, sweat, and brilliance. She was ready. At least she hoped she was. Emma wasn't dressed to impress. She was dressed to prove herself. A simple cream blouse, navy skirt, and low heels that had seen more sidewalks than carpets. Her dark curls were tied back in a neat bun, her makeup minimal. No designer labels, no showy jewelry, just a woman with ideas, and the nerve to bring them. The lobby sparkled with glass chandeliers and marble floors so reflective, Emma could see the doubt flicker in her own eyes as she crossed them. Behind the front desk sat a young receptionist with impossibly straight blonde hair and a cold stare that flicked up for only half a second. "I'm here for the 9:30 interview," Emma said with polite confidence, "for the strategic communications director role." The receptionist's lips barely twitched. "Name?" "Emma Carter." She typed with a clack, clack, clack of acrylic nails, then tilted her head. "Have a seat. Someone will come for you." Emma nodded and sat down on one of the chrome-framed chairs. They were beautiful, modern, and incredibly uncomfortable. The silence in the lobby was thick with judgment. Every executive who passed wore tailored suits, perfect smiles, and shoes worth more than her monthly rent. Emma kept her head up, back straight. She belonged here, even if they didn't think so yet. What Emma didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that this interview wouldn't go the way she imagined. Not because she wasn't qualified. Not because she wasn't brilliant, but because someone had already decided she didn't look like someone who deserved to sit at the table. And the moment that door opened, everything would begin to unravel. Upstairs, in the 29th floor conference room, 2 executives reviewed her resume with raised eyebrows and smirks. "Emma Carter," said Jordan Pike, the head of strategy, as he twirled a gold pen between his fingers. "Small agencies, mid-level positions, nothing exactly impressive." "She freelanced," replied Fiona Harrington, VP of Corporate Affairs. She curled her lip. "She's probably one of those tryhards who read Harvard Business Review articles and thinks she's a thought leader." They laughed. "She's not even wearing a blazer in her LinkedIn photo," Fiona added, tapping her manicured nail on the tablet. "We're a billion-dollar firm. Our team needs polish." Jordan leaned back. "Well, let's have a little fun before we send her packing." Back in the lobby, a man in a pressed suit approached Emma. "Miss Carter," he said, a clipboard in hand. "Right this way." Emma rose with grace, her heart pounding. She followed him through corridors of power, past glass-walled meeting rooms filled with professionals and polished success. Finally, they entered the interview room, large, sleek, and ice-cold in more ways than one. 3 executives sat at the far end of the long table, Fiona, Jordan, and a third man she didn't recognize. None of them stood, none of them smiled. Jordan gestured lazily. "You can sit." Emma nodded politely and took her seat. "Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to speak with you about." Fiona cut in. "Before we begin, Miss Carter, are you comfortable in those shoes? You seem a little off balance." Emma blinked. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you." Jordan tilted his head. "Tell us, what makes you think someone with your background can handle our portfolio?" "I've led strategic campaigns for tech startups and nonprofits, helping them double engagement rates and grow revenue over 40%, Emma said with quiet strength. "I've also been a keynote speaker at—" Right, Fiona interrupted, waving a hand. "But this isn't a charity. This is Callister Global. You'll be managing partnerships with luxury brands, top-tier media. Our clients expect a certain presence. Emma's hands tightened around her portfolio. I understand. But I believe substance should come before style. And my work speaks for itself. Jordan chuckled. Does your outfit speak too? There was a pause. A long, unbearable pause. Emma's voice stayed calm, but her heart trembled. I chose this outfit to reflect professionalism and practicality. Practical for a school PTA, maybe, Fiona said under her breath. The third executive leaned forward. Let's get to the real point. This role is client-facing. We need someone who embodies our brand. High-end, chic, sophisticated. Your resume is fine, but we're not sure you represent us. Jordan reached for a water bottle, and almost too perfectly knocked it over. The water spilled across the table and splashed onto Emma's lap. Oh no, Jordan said with a smirk. How clumsy of me. Emma stood quickly, water soaking into her skirt and blouse. She reached for tissues, but none were offered. Fiona simply sipped her latte, unbothered. I'm all right, Emma said, forcing a tight smile as she dabbed at herself. Shall we continue? Fiona shook her head. Actually, we've seen enough. Excuse me? Emma asked, stunned. Jordan stood. We don't want to waste your time. Or ours. You're clearly not a cultural fit for this company. Emma felt like the floor had vanished under her feet. So you're rejecting me? Because of how I look? Don't be dramatic, Fiona said with a small laugh. It's about alignment. You just don't belong here. The words burned. Emma had endured setbacks before, but this was cruelty, pure and simple, deliberate, calculated, and worse, amused. As she collected her soaked things and walked toward the door, she paused, then turned. I'll leave, she said quietly. But remember this moment, because you might regret it sooner than you think. Fiona rolled her eyes. Security's at the elevator, dear. Do take care. Emma stepped out into the hallway, fighting back the heat in her chest, the lump in her throat. The sting of humiliation was nothing compared to the rage building inside her. She didn't care about the job anymore. She cared about the message. That they could treat someone like this and feel proud of it. She rounded the corner toward the elevator and slammed straight into someone. Strong arms caught her, familiar arms. Emma, said the voice, deep, surprised, and full of concern. Her heart stopped. She looked up and met the eyes of Matthew Callister, CEO of Callister Global, billionaire, visionary, founder, and her husband of 10 years. His eyes narrowed at her wet clothes and stricken face. Emma, what the hell happened to you? She opened her mouth to answer, but didn't need to. Behind her, the laughter started again. Fiona and Jordan exited the meeting room, still mocking their charity case applicant, until they saw who Emma stood beside. Their smiles died. Their steps faltered, and Fiona whispered as her face drained of color. Oh my God, she's his wife. The woman they laughed at now stood beside the man who owned it all. The entire 29th floor held its breath. Fiona and Jordan froze mid-step, their smirks shattering into silence as they registered the figure Emma stood with. Matthew Callister, founder and CEO of the very empire they thought they ruled. A man known for his brilliance, yes, for his intensity, absolutely. But what Matthew was feared for most was how swiftly he dealt with disrespect. He didn't speak at first, just looked at Emma, really looked at her, and slowly took in the damp blouse, the soaked portfolio she clutched like a shield, and the thin line of moisture still clinging to her skirt. Emma, he said again, voice like steel wrapped in velvet. Who did this to you? Emma hesitated, not because she was afraid, but because she was giving the people behind her one final chance to save themselves. None of them took it. Fiona stepped forward, voice high and falsely sweet. Mr. Callister, we weren't expecting you today. This is such a surprise. Jordan followed quickly. Yes, sir. We had no idea Miss Carter was my wife. Matthew finished for him. Calm, cold, deadly. Both executives blinked, swallowing air like it might save them. Yes, Fiona said faintly. Well, we didn't recognize her. Matthew's expression didn't change. Then I'd suggest you reevaluate your approach to hiring, because failing to recognize brilliance while splashing water on a guest and humiliating a candidate isn't just unprofessional. His voice dropped lower. It's disgraceful. Emma finally spoke. They dismissed me, Matt, before I could even finish my proposal, before I was allowed to show my work. Matthew turned to Jordan. Is that true? Aye, sir. Her resume didn't reflect. Did you review her portfolio? Jordan blinked. She brought one. Yes. Did you open it? No answer. Did you let her present a single full idea before you dismissed her? Fiona's arms folded tightly across her chest. With all due respect, Mr. Callister, we're simply trying to uphold standards. Appearances matter at this level. Matthew looked between the two of them for a long, hard moment. Then he turned to Emma. Come with me. She hesitated. Matt. He softened for her, just for a moment. I need you to see something. He gently placed a hand on her back, guiding her past the stunned executives. Half a dozen employees had now gathered at the corner of the hallway, whispering furiously behind coffee mugs and notebooks. Matthew didn't care. Emma didn't either. In the elevator, she leaned against the wall. The ride was silent except for the soft whirring of the floors ticking by. Emma, Matthew said finally, eyes forward. I can't believe they treated you like that. If I'd known. She cut him off softly. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to be the CEO's wife. I wanted to be Emma Carter, the marketing strategist you couldn't afford to lose. Matthew turned to her, his face filled with quiet pain. And that's exactly who you are. They were too arrogant to see it. Asterisk asterisk inside his office. Asterisk asterisk a modern cathedral of glass and walnut panels, panoramic windows stretching across the skyline. Emma stood at the center like a storm preparing to break. Matthew pressed a button on his desk. Security. Please escort Fiona Harrington and Jordan Pike to conference room B. I want them seated and waiting in 10 minutes. Yes, Mr. Callister. He looked at Emma. I want you there too. Her eyes narrowed. To watch. To speak, he said. If you're willing. She gave a sharp nod. I am. 10 minutes later, conference room B was tense with anticipation. Fiona sat with crossed legs and fake confidence, while Jordan's foot tapped nervously beneath the table. The third executive, Kenneth Rowe, the one who'd stayed mostly silent earlier, looked anywhere but at them. The door opened. Matthew stepped in. Emma followed. And this time, she didn't look like someone trying to prove she belonged. She looked like someone who owned the room. Matthew didn't sit. He remained standing at the head of the table, a hand resting lightly on Emma's shoulder. I started Callister Global with 3 things, he began. A folding desk, a used laptop, and a belief that smart, passionate people can build empires. I didn't ask them what car they drove. I didn't check their wash brand. I didn't care about the suit. His eyes burned into Fiona's. I cared about vision. He turned to Jordan. About strategy. Then, finally, back to Emma. And about integrity. Jordan raised a shaky hand. Sir, No, Matthew cut in. You had a world-class candidate sitting in front of you. A woman who has led more successful grassroots campaigns with smaller budgets than your entire division, has pulled in 2 quarters. A woman whose name alone is whispered at marketing expos. And you chose to mock her, because she didn't wear Prada. Fiona flushed. We had no idea she was. Forget that she's my wife, Matthew snapped. Pretend she was anyone. Is that how you treat candidates? You laugh at them. Spill water on them. cut them off mid-sentence. You humiliated her. Fiona looked to Kenneth for support. He said nothing. Matthew turned to Emma. Would you like to say anything? She took a deep breath. Yes. Her voice rang clear across the glass walls. I came here not to be someone's wife, not to be handed a job. I came to earn one. I brought strategies that could have doubled your engagement within a quarter. I brought projections, ideas, case studies. You didn't even open the folder. She looked directly at Fiona. Then Jordan. You didn't judge my qualifications. You judged my clothes. And that says more about you than it ever did about me. Fiona opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Emma placed her portfolio on the table. If you want to read it, go ahead, but I'm not asking anymore. She turned and walked to the door, paused, glanced at Matthew. He gave a single nod. When the door closed behind her, silence stretched long and heavy. Matthew folded his arms. I'm implementing a full HR audit, starting with this division. Effective immediately. Jordan stood. Sir, please, surely we can find a way to move past. You should start moving, Matthew said, cold as stone. Security will be here in 2 minutes. Your final paycheck will be delivered by end of day. Fiona, the same applies. Fiona stood up so fast she knocked over her tablet. You're firing us. Matthew leaned forward. You fired yourselves. The moment you turned a job interview into a high school popularity contest. He turned to Kenneth, the quiet one. You'll stay, but you'll be on probation. One more incident like this, just one, and you're done too. Kenneth nodded quickly. Understood, sir. Back upstairs, Emma sat quietly in Matthew's office, staring out the window. He joined her. I'm sorry it had to go like that, he said softly. I'm not, Emma replied. I didn't want revenge, she added. I wanted respect. Matthew smiled. Then maybe. It's time you had both. She turned to him. Do you still want the job? He asked. She didn't hesitate. I want the job, but only if I'm chosen for my skills. Matthew laughed. Then I'll have HR post the opening again. Publicly. Anyone can apply. And the top 3 candidates will present in front of a new panel. Including me. Including you. And including someone who actually knows marketing. Emma grinned. You're not giving me the job. I'm giving you the stage. She looked out at the skyline, the city glowing beneath them. And for the first time that day, she smiled, not with relief, but with readiness. She returned not as a candidate, but as a storm no one could stop. 2 weeks later, a fresh breeze swept through the glass towers of Callister Global, one that didn't come from the changing season, but from change itself. Gone were the smug voices that once dictated who belonged. Gone were the sharp heels that clicked with arrogance instead of purpose. The floor still shined, but now it reflected a different energy. And the woman they once mocked. She was back. But she wasn't the same. The email had gone out to over 800 applicants. The job was relisted, the process rebooted, the executive board restructured. Matthew Callister had kept his word. A new interview panel had been formed, with zero tolerance for bias and disrespect. Emma Carter had reapplied anonymously. Her resume now stripped of all hint of association with the CEO. She earned her spot as one of the top 3 finalists. And today, all 3 would present their vision in front of the full board. No favoritism, no shortcuts, just ideas, just proof. Emma stood outside the boardroom, wearing a simple deep green dress and a quiet fire in her chest. Her presentation rested in the same worn leather folder, but she no longer clutched it like armor. Now she carried it like a sword. Emma Carter, said the assistant. They're ready for you. She stepped inside. The boardroom was filled, some familiar faces, many new ones. At the center sat Matthew, unreadable but focused. To his left, Danielle Vasquez, A seasoned marketing expert, Matthew had flown in from Leh to ensure true industry perspective. To his right, Alec Chen, a quiet, brilliant data strategist who had no tolerance for fluff. And then, down the table, two seats where Fiona and Jordan once sat, now empty. A small but powerful absence. Emma stood tall at the head of the table. She plugged in her tablet, clicked her remote, and her first slide filled the digital wall. No title, just a single quote in white letters. People don't care how much you know, until they know how much you care. Theodore Roosevelt. A ripple of interest moved through the room. Emma spoke, voice firm but full of heart. I'm not here to show you just numbers. I'm here to show you why Callister Global could lead the future of human-centered branding. Click. Slide 2. A sleek, moving infographic showed a timeline of marketing efforts across luxury brands. What worked, what flopped, what was outdated. For years, Emma continued, the industry has focused on perfection, polish, prestige. But the next generation of consumers want something more. They want honesty, impact, relatability. She paused, looked directly at them. They don't care if your executive wears a $1,000 suit. They care if your product solves their problem, makes them feel seen, gives them hope. Click. Slide 3. A side-by-side comparison between Callister's recent campaigns and her proposed revamp. The numbers didn't just rise, they skyrocketed. Engagement, loyalty, revenue, global reach. People leaned in. Danielle scribbled a note. Alec nodded once. He hadn't nodded at anyone else all morning. Emma held her ground and delivered every line without apology, without fear. She ended with a quiet declaration. I believe marketing is not about selling. It's about serving. It's about making people feel something real. And I'm here because I believe Callister Global can lead that revolution. Silence. Then soft murmurs. Then applause. Genuine, not polite. Emma smiled, bowed her head respectfully, and gathered her materials. As she turned to leave, Matthew stood. Miss Carter. She turned. Please remain while we deliberate. She sat down again, not as a candidate grasping at hope, but as a woman who had nothing left to prove. 20 minutes later, Danielle Vasquez spoke first. That, she said, was one of the most grounded and emotionally intelligent presentations I've seen in years. She didn't just understand the market. She understood the soul of it. Alec followed. Her numbers check out. But more importantly, her strategy doesn't depend on gimmicks. It scales. Matthew said nothing. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. The same city where Emma once walked to work from a tiny one-bedroom, with a peanut butter sandwich and a $12 pair of flats. He turned back to the room. Let's bring her in. Emma re-entered, calm, ready for anything. Matthew remained professional, his tone formal in front of the board. Miss Carter, he said, after reviewing your performance, your proposal, and your vision for this company. He paused. We are prepared to offer you the position of Director of Strategic Communications at Callister Global. There was no cheering, no theatrics. Just a moment so still it felt sacred. Emma closed her eyes for a second, and then nodded. Thank you, she said softly. I accept. 3 months later, Emma sat in her new office overlooking Central Park. Her team buzzed around her, diverse, passionate, and sharp. The first campaign she launched broke engagement records across platforms. The press called her a quiet marketing genius. Forbes did a profile. Clients asked for her by name. But the praise didn't matter nearly as much as one simple truth. She hadn't succeeded because of her last name. She'd succeeded in spite of it. One afternoon, Matthew visited her office. He leaned against the doorframe and watched her type. You look different, he said with a smile. Emma looked up. How? Like someone who walked through fire and came out forged in gold. She smiled. Feels that way. He stepped inside, holding a folder. What's that? She asked. The old interview notes, the ones Jordan took. He handed them to her. She flipped through the pages. Only 2 notes had been written under her name. Plain appearance. Probably overcompensates. Wouldn't last a week. Emma set the papers down, completely unbothered. Matthew asked, "What do you want me to do with them?" She smiled again. "Frame them." He raised a brow. Seriously. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the city again. "I want every girl who comes in here for an interview to see them," she said, "so they know that it's not about where you come from. It's about where you're willing to go." Final scene. A young intern walked past Emma's office a week later. She saw the frame and paused. Inside was a single typed sentence. Plain appearance. Probably overcompensates. And below it, handwritten in gold ink. "This was said about the woman who became our top executive. What will they say about you?" Emma Carter, Director, Callister Global. The intern smiled and walked into her interview with her head high.